What up, yo? It's me, your boy Grumpy, at it again with another video. Now, you already know about weird horror games, especially visual novels like Doki Doki Literature Club. Man, I'm never doing that ever again. But what if I told you there was a horror game about us not even being real? In fact, as we're speaking right now, what if you're talking to an illusion? Alright, I was just trying to be mysterious. Who the hell decided to delete the video? It doesn't even matter. Purple background Joel, get your ass to explaining.
You know, the other Joel doesn't have to be such a jackass all the time, and maybe this why you won't be deleted. Now, anyways, for those who must be wondering, The Non-Existent of You and Me was a game that was released around mid-December. Now, the moment once this was on Steam, this achieved a lot of love and attention, and also has blown up quite a lot. Now, you must be wondering, what the heck is this game is about? This game is a visual novel, and apparently, according to visual novels, it's a type of interaction fiction video game originating in Japan that tells the story through static images, often anime style, text, sound, and music with player interaction, usually limited to clicking to advance text or making narrative choices that affect the story branching path and endings. And now, my dear friends, since you have the basic knowledge of visual novels, so make sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and let's dive into our fleeting memories. Now, when you first start, you're introduced with this title screen, and we have our settings: continue, fleeting memories, backers, and exit. Also, we have this weird random anime girl over here, but you will know her name later.
很高兴你能愿意为我这么做，只是现在的我还是我吗？我不清楚，但我也曾期盼过这幅景象，哪怕它只是一种可能。我没有恶意，只是我并不希望它真的发生。但无论怎么说，这都是你的选择。否定这段故事和你选择的选择，好吧，那就让此刻的我不复存在吧。
That's right, fellas, this game actually does have voice acting, and starting out with the first chapter, aka the first encounter. Now, this recalls to when we first meet Lilith. Now, apparently we're actually about to die, so I don't know what this has any correlation. Maybe this might be our purgatory, maybe heaven, perhaps hell. But after this, we're met up with the first girl, or I guess literally the person that we're going to be talking to throughout the whole entire game. So while we're also talking with this mysterious girl, we also notice that the objects around this room is apparently literally narrating the story and can also talk to us, which is, yeah, cool, totally not weird at all. Also, not to mention, they also call us our majesty, or the honored one. I mean, shit, I didn't know I was Gojo. Okay, but jokes aside, I guess we were probably playing the role of some sort of king before. Maybe that's before we got dragged into this nonsense. But as this mysterious girl is staring at us, also some of the dialogue options are quietly aware that this is a dating simulator, and it also says the same for our options as well. And you know, as she gets closer to us, she does the usual dating simulator schmick. She hugs us, and she also introduces her name as the girl that we mentioned to from the beginning. Her name is Lilith. Now, skipping ahead, we actually go to our actual first chapter, Sweet Cake Time. And also another cool thing is that we also get little quotes every single time with every new chapter, which I think is pretty awesome. So after that, we get introduced to talking with the chair, and it mentions that I guess we were actually a king, so that confirms my theory. Now, apparently this talks about a missing girl, and however, this chair has something interesting to say, that a missing girl appears in yellow notebooks, screens, and in moments of fleeting time. Now, whatever the heck this girl is, we don't know her name yet, but all we know is that her name is just censored. And so after talking with the rest of our subjects, and unfortunately all of their attempts to find any clues were unfortunately useless, but however, the black notebook shows up. We're also given more information that her name used to be blank, and she was once our blank, so she definitely had some sort of relation to us. And also, we might have potentially figured out the reason why all of this has started. She once wanted to be blank, but then you chose the other blank, which caused all of this to happen, which we're gonna have to find out later on throughout the story. And of course, before we can learn more about this mysterious girl or her name or perhaps any details about it, Lilith comes back and everything seems to turn weirdly normal. And also, while we're talking with Lilith, apparently we also don't remember anything that has happened or whatever the hell has happened according to the history log, even though the history log has been, obviously changed, which also adds on more that the fact that if I had a nickel for every single time there's a visual novel with a girl that has the ability to warp the game around her, I'll have 2 nickels, which is funny that it happens twice. Doki Doki Literature Club. But aside from that, we finally get her name again. Her name is Lilith, and also it's stated that we used to be childhood friends, or probably not, but who really gives a shit. A couple of yapping sessions later, we finally get into the main topic, baking a cake. Now, after through one dramatic load of text and for some reason the choice to sorrowfully make our food, we still ask the one question: who the heck exactly is she truly? And of course she answered with the usual, strange girl coming to her house. But then she also asks us this question: who do we think that she is to us? Or honestly, she probably just thinks that this is a cliche horror story or an actual visual novel game. And if there's one thing that I've noticed about this game, is that this game is not afraid to break the fourth wall, and is probably not afraid to call out. So while we're waiting for the cake to bake, we also have a topic and conversation about the self. The self being apparently how the player itself feels on playing these visual novel games, and how the game itself wants to make the player feel like they're just more than just pixels on a screen, which is also kind of funny because that's also one of the options as well. And she's just 100% self-aware that she's literally just a pixel on screen that we're just talking to because we quite really have nothing better to be doing in our lives. Which, onto the topic of that, while we're waiting for our cake to bake, she starts to talk about the perspective of self, which actually gets to a point. She starts to explain everything about how the perspective of self usually works and how, visual novels usually put that in order for the person to feel like, hey, I actually feel like this character instead of just actually looking at pixels from a screen, which is actually really deep. But the one most important thing that came through this really long conversation is this one sentence that she states, and I think I would rather show it to you than tell it to you.
我是真实存在的吗？你之前提过，想要和我一起去寻找这个问题的答案。所以在接下来的时间里，我们会一起做各种事，并思考一些议题，直到故事的最后，你能坚定地做出属于自己的选择。咦，试点有这么重要吗？也许你会这么提问。只要是有常识的人，就都会觉得世界正在理所当然地运行着吧，就像这个游戏。
So after this other second part, this long complicated talk about the part of the self and what the story develops and yabba dabba dooba, and finally, the cake is nearly ready. However, there is one small issue. The oven thinks that it's a time machine, and apparently that's a problem, because if the oven thinks that it's a time machine, terrible things will happen. So then we have to go through a whole entire minigame convincing the oven that it's not a time machine. And the cooler thing about this minigame is that instead of you just mindlessly clicking on the text and hoping that you'll just get it right, you actually have a little progression bar, and you also have to time your clicks as well, kind of like a rhythm game. And of course, it's not like we're just gonna wait for you to automatically get to 100% according to the gameplay. I think you probably just have to pass through a certain requirement, which makes me curious on what happens if you do fail the minigame. So right after, once we're done with that minigame, convincing the oven that it's not a time machine and preventing our reality from getting turned into ashes, we finally hand over the first slice of cake to Lilith. Also, by the way, the cake was burned. And right after this, case the shit gets sent flying up. So we just did all of this for nothing, potentially just saved reality from shattering itself. But doesn't matter. She acts sad and whatever, and we just like clean up the mess. That's why I just chose. I was genuinely laughing my ass off during this. I don't know, maybe my sense of humor is fucked. Before you fry the shit out of me for having a goofy ass laugh, to wrap this up, basically, Lilith has a special surprise, and she can just make cakes out of thin air, which means all of our hard work virtually means nothing. We also get to choose our flavor, and yes, I chose fried chicken cake. Who's gonna stop me? And after this, we share a cake, and that's the end for chapter 1, which thus ends the video.